Hi, let's listen to The Danger of Single Story, an enlightening speech by Chimamanda and Adichie. I am a storyteller and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think it probably happened when I was 4. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. How does Adichie begin her enlightening speech? Is there anything striking in that beginning? Yes, of course. See, I am a storyteller. She plainly speaks up. She does not beat around the bush. She is straightforward. She says, I am a storyteller. So the striking point in Adichie's speech is that she directly says that she is a storyteller, and she is explaining to us some of her personal stories, and through this speech she is going to give us a clear picture of what is the danger of a single story. So what does she say about her childhood? Yes, where did she grow up? Yes, she grew up on a university campus in Nigeria. So probably her parents may be working there in the university campus. Alright, now what does her mother speak about her reading habit? When did she start reading stories? Yes, her mother says that she started reading at the age of 2 years, such a small age. Now, probably she believes that maybe it happened, when she tries to recollect from her memory, she believes that it may have happened at the age of 4. Okay, when she was 4. So she says that she was an early reader. So she liked literature. What did she read? What sort of books did she read? It's British and American children's books. She is a Nigerian, an African. And what was popular those days were these American and British books. She read those children's books. Now she is going to tell you about her writing habits. What sort of books did she write? I was also an early writer. So at a young age, she started writing even. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations. The outward layout, the design with pictures are called as illustrations. And she did it with crayon pencils. She wrote certain stories, and outside she made it beautiful with some paintings or drawings, illustrations. And My poor mother was obligated to read. Usually it happens when children write stories, they show it to their mother, and however busy the mother could be, she is forced, obligated, okay, obligated means forced to read those stories. I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. What sort of stories did she write? She wrote exactly the kinds of stories she was reading. What sort of stories were she reading? Yes, British and American children's books. So, the stories that she wrote were also exactly like that. How the stories of American and British books were, such stories she wrote. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. Yes, the British European books, they describe their characters as white people with blue eyes. Europeans are like that. So their stories also will describe such characters.
Those characters played in the snow. They ate apples and talked a lot about the weather. How lovely it was that the sun had come out. But I had never been outside Nigeria. Adichie had never been outside Nigeria. Nigeria
It's a tropical place. There is no snow there. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes. There were no apples. And they never talked about the weather because there was no need to. Okay? So, what she is trying to tell you is that her characters, at an early age she started writing, and her characters were typical European like characters, though she was a Nigerian. What this shows, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Okay, she says the children are quite easily influenced. This girl read British and American stories, and it naturally happened that, or it affected her, or it influenced her in her writing. She was quite vulnerable. Children are like that. They are easily hurt. They are easily influenced. So, this girl, Chimamanda, she was easily influenced by British and American books. That was why when she wrote, she also wrote with the same type of characters she was familiar with. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced, sure, that books by their very nature had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Okay. So she had a single story about books when she was a child. What was that single story about books? Books by their very nature should be having foreigners in them. Okay, who ate apples, who played in the snow, who are white and had blue eyes. This was the single story she had about books. Now things changed when I discovered African books. There weren't many of them available. African books were not there many in number which were available. They weren't quite as easy to find as the foreign books. But when I read Achebe and Laye, I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. This Achebe and Laye, they are African writers. In those days, African literature, it was not much books. And when she happened to read those, she realized that people like her. She is a Nigerian girl, and characters who were having kinky hair and chocolate color of skin. Europeans are white in color, but Africans, their skin color is chocolate like. Okay, so such characters could also exist in literature. That was a new knowledge, new idea for her. Until that time, she never had such an idea about literature. Only when she read African books authored by Achebe and Laye, she happened to know that there could be characters like her also in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. Then she started to write about things she recognized. I loved the American and British books I read. She loved those books, American and British books. Why? They stirred my imagination and opened up new worlds for me. This is the reason why Chimamanda loved American and British books. What's the reason? Those books stirred, excited her imagination. She could visualize in her mind a lot of things she never saw in reality. That is why she says they stirred her imagination and opened up new worlds for her. But the African writers saved me from having a single story of books, of what books are. These African writers' books, Achebe and Laye's books, saved her from having a single story about books.